Hello, good evening. Another beautiful Sunday is here. Welcome to Eye on Port here on Metropolitan Television. The show is proudly powered by the Ghana Revenue Authority, GWEL PLC, Serene Insurance, Ghana Link Network Services, Meridian Port Services, MPS, and indeed Phoenix Insurance. The show is proudly powered by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority-GPHA, and our media partner is the Business and Financial Times. Now, if you want to have a grasp of all that transpired on the show tonight, make a date and grab the Thursday edition of the BNFT, and you'll be able to see all that happened on the show tonight. We are streaming live on our social media pages, and on Facebook we are streaming live at Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Still on Facebook, we are live at Port of Tema, and on YouTube we are streaming live at Eye on Port, which I'll be getting interactive with you. And so all you have to do is sit back, relax, grab your phones, and send us your messages and comments via our dedicated WhatsApp line, which is 0559-019-177, 0559-019-177. Now, when the time is ripe, and I pick signals from the production team, we shall activate our phone lines for you to call in and contribute to the discussion. My name is Kennedy Mona. We are going for a quick break. When we return, we'll continue with the show. Please stay with us.
Guys, no, I'm tired. I'll go on a date with whoever gets here first.
Princess, really? Okay, I come.
Shut up!
Mame, Boss, fill my tank with Super XP Ron 95.
Fill up with Super XP Ron 95 and Diesel XP high performance products from GWEL.
Sorry, Tony got here first, so I'm stepping with him.
Oh, cut him. Hey, go for mommy.
Choose Super XP Ron 95 and Diesel XP for an energizing driving experience. Always go for GWEL Super XP Ron 95. GWEL, good energy. GWEL is good energy. Electricity, pay your taxes. Yeah, our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is, you still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse, and my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. Currently, my goods are on the high seas, covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance. Oh, Ajima, tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance for the project, and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating greater opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
Business and life can be like the sea sometimes. Sometimes serene, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, and at times it brings the unexpected. However it is like, trust Phoenix Insurance for your home, car, business, and marine insurance needs. Call 0302-246-319 or 0243-690-492.
At Phoenix, you experience a delightful service delivered with wisdom.
All right, so welcome back. We're now going to take a look at happenings in the port and shipping industry in the course of the week. And just yesterday, the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority held the second in the series of quarterly health walks post-COVID-19. We have details of that, plus the fact that the Tema branch of the Ghana Institute of Freight Forwarders also, during the week, inaugurated new members. They've elected new members, and these members were sworn into office. We have details of that story as well, plus some others. Please stay with us.
Meridian Port Services, MPS, has held its quarterly stakeholder engagement with shipping lines with an assurance to offer them efficient services. The quarterly engagement was also used to interact with the shipping lines on progress being made by MPS towards making the port of Tema the leading container hub in West Africa. The CEO of MPS, Mohamed Samara, prevailed on the shipping lines to use the port of Tema as their hub for efficient port services. The representatives of the shipping lines visited MPS Terminal 3 to observe operations at the terminal. They also used the opportunity to witness the arrival of the 3 STS cranes and 12 RTG cranes procured by MPS at a cost of over $50 million to boost productivity at its terminal. Mohamed Samara said the port of Tema has become very competitive as it has more handling capacity.
In any developing country, you realize one of the key elements is the port, because the port drives economy, or the economy runs through the port. So it is key to have this capacity. And these projects are infrastructure. You cannot just wait for the volume to happen. Then after that, you react by creating, the infrastructure as well as the handling capacity. So somebody has got to freeze the situation and not wait for the chicken to lay an egg or the egg to become a chicken. You have to pick whatever and then you have to invest. And this is exactly what we're doing.
The managing director of Maersk Ghana, Razak Ngula, said the investment in the cranes will go a long way to serve them well.
Let me congratulate MPS for this very bold investment. It's one that is super exciting to see. Also for the community, I think it's going to make a lot of difference. Firstly, making the Ghana port more competitive across the sub-region, and I think also becoming almost like one of the locations that everyone can look up to. So for shipping lines, this just adds to the efficiencies that we've all been asking for. And I think once you bring in efficiencies on board, you also add value to doing business. And then, of course, it translates into what everyone else in the environment and community benefits.
The Deputy Commissioner of Customs in charge of suspense regime and chairman of the Integrated Customs Management System ICOM's implementation team, Emmanuel Oyene, has commended freight forwarders for their immense role in ensuring trade facilitation at the country's ports. Speaking at the swearing-in ceremony of the Tema district executives, Emmanuel Oyene said freight forwarders played a crucial role in the successful implementation of the Integrated Customs Management System.
The success of our Integrated Customs Management System, which was rolled out in 2020, would not have happened but for the close collaboration we had with all the freight forwarding institutions in the country.
He charged the various freight forwarding associations to regularly have a peer review to weed out the few bad ones who are tarnishing the image of the profession.
But let's be ready to always examine ourselves and expose ourselves as and when we have to do it. The few bad nuts are indeed creating a big problem for all of us. The government will not shirk its responsibility of being a regulator. We will regulate the industry with all fairness. We will regulate the industry with adroitness, but we need your cooperation and we need your support.
The chairman of the Tema district, Johnny Manti, said the new leadership will strive to make the institute to exhaust its potential to become the foremost think tank for directing the future of international trade, logistics and transport. He pledged their continuous collaboration with all stakeholders in the port and shipping business to improve the industry.
We are going to collaborate when necessary, as we have always done, with agencies, organizations, and individuals in the interest of this institute, and of course the nation at large. Nonetheless, our collaboration should not be taken lightly. We shall not hesitate to pursue every lawful remedy to assert our rights and objectives to enable the institute thrive.
There were solidarity messages from sister freight forwarding associations and stakeholders.
And she's giving you all her unfledged support. How far he has worked with you, he promises that she will continue to work with you like that. So let us all come together, Jojo, and solve any issue that comes along amicably.
Let us try not to bend the rules for profit. And let us remember that the public vividly recollect any little bad thing that we do, but easily forget our worth as trade facilitators.
I would like to urge the newly executive that they should continue this engagement. And I'm sure MPS will be able to improve so that we can offer you guys the best of services that you need. I think we'll have a very positive news about what MPS is delivering to you guys, so that at least we all will be able to provide a better service for you guys and also for our country, Ghana.
I'd like to entreat all of you and entreat the newly elected executive officers that let us do it together. Let us create an image for ourselves as freight forwarders. Whether we like it or not, when you get up every morning, we look up to the sea, we look up to Tema or KIA or Aplao or wherever.
We'll give them all the support that they need, that they require to move this thing forward. This train is not stopping anytime now.
The Tema branch of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry has held its fourth bi-monthly meeting of the year as part of continuous efforts to foster business collaborations among members. The meeting was an opportunity for members to showcase their products and services to each other in order to identify potential business synergies that could be created. It also served as an opportunity to evaluate the existing business environment and address current obstacles to the growth of businesses within the region. Membership of the Tema chapter present at the meeting came from various industries such as the logistics, cosmetics, textile, food processing industry, industrial maintenance and support services, among others. Speaking on the sidelines of the meeting, the regional vice chairman of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce, Samuel Adi, highlighted the significance of businesses to join the chamber.
We continue to say that the private sector is the engine of growth, and the engine of growth actually starts with the chamber. All over the world, we have chamber. So Ghana Chamber, it is not an exception that any association will say that I'm not supposed to be part of Ghana National Chamber of Commerce. We have met to think of ourselves, to think of our businesses, and see the shortfalls and see how we can amend it. As a business organization, all that we are interested is to make sure that the business grows. So when we meet like that, all the business people that come around, they come with their challenges, and then we are able to profile solutions to help all the businesses.
In a bid to raise awareness about sickle cell disease, the GPHA Hospital Takoradi launched a sickle cell clinic dedicated to treating and managing this condition. To commemorate the event, GPHA staff, the wider community, and individuals affected by sickle cell gathered at the Takoradi Port Senior Staff Clubhouse. Here, there were presentations from experienced healthcare professionals delving into insights on sickle cell, including current medications and treatment approaches.
Early detection and access to quality healthcare are essential components of improving the lives of those living with sickle cell disease. Our collective efforts can make a significant difference, whether we are a parent, family member, healthcare professional, a caregiver, a researcher, or simply someone who cares. Your contribution is invaluable. Together, we can enhance the lives of those affected by the sickle cell disease and work towards a future where no one has to endure its pain and challenges.
Somewhere around JSS 1, 2, that is when I learned that I had a condition.
different from everybody else, especially my classmates. So I had my fair share of hospital visits and admissions and all that. Most of my childhood memories are memories from hospitals or admissions. So, but I always tell myself that I won't let this condition limit me. Sickle cell patients, as he said, is not a death sentence. As much as possible, they should have as much a normal life than each and every one of us.
Sickle cell disease is real. And in Ghana, we've realized that every single day we are diagnosing about 200 people who have sickle cell disease. And so my advice is that since it's something that we pass on from mother to child, it's important that every single person knows your sickle cell status. Knowing it helps you to plan your life better. And so if you are listening to us and you haven't tested, please walk into a hospital, get tested. Before you get to that point where you have to make a decision and it becomes difficult.
I'm also a sickle cell patient, which is I'm SC, and I double up as a nurse at GPHA hospital. The whole idea came about when I realized that there isn't much of sickle cell clinics in Intergraded here. There's only one at Panta Regional Hospital, and there's a need where we could get facility for easy care for all these patients, because this condition actually comes with a lot of complications. So myself and other health personnel in the facility came together and decided we would establish a sickle cell clinic and to also have this program to launch and outdoor the clinic as well.
It will be recalled that in June, the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority commenced its quarterly health walk, which was paused due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The authority over the weekend embarked on the second of its kind this year, the 2.5-kilometer health walk, which began from the premises of the Tema Port Administration, ended with an hour-long aerobic session at the refurbished GPHA Sports Hall in Community 2, where staff and their families gathered. The Marketing and Public Affairs Manager at the Port of Tema, Sewa Abena Opoku-Fosu, who doubles as the chairperson for the authority's Sports and Entertainment Committee, promised that a lot of activities are lined up in the coming weeks, all geared towards improving the well-being of staff.
The next one is going to be held in, I think, the 19th of October. Since October is Customer Service Month, we are trying to see if we can get some other stakeholders like the freight forwarders, some of the shipping lines to join us, and we'll have a health walk for the Tema Port community. And then we will also have our interdepartmental games on the 18th of November. We have heard that some other companies want to join, but for the very first time, it's just the GPHA department. Then hopefully next year we can consider doing it with other companies in Tema.
All right, so those were happenings in the port and shipping industry in the course of the week. We are now taking a look at the word or phrase of the day. Remember, the word or phrase of the day has been fashioned to bring you up to speed with the terminologies and jargons we use in the shipping industry. And today's word is custom house. Custom house.
Customs house. Customs house refers to a government office where duties are paid, documents filed, and so forth on foreign shipments.
All right, welcome back. We are zooming into our discussion proper tonight, and tonight we are taking a look at the NIMS. That's the National Integrated Maritime Strategy. Now, this has been a document that has been in the pipeline for quite some time now, and just a couple of weeks ago, it was launched by His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Now, it's supposed to be a guiding document that will strengthen the framework for maritime governance in our country. And so tonight we are trying to take a look at what next after the launch of the National Integrated Maritime Strategy, what the prospects are for growth and sustainability of the maritime industry or the maritime sector in our country. And we couldn't have gotten a better guest in the studios tonight to discuss this particular document than our own Dr. Emmanuel Kofimbia, who is here with us. Good evening, Doc, and welcome to Iron Port. You qualify to be called a friend of the show. Is your microphone on, Doc? Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Good to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I was saying, you qualify to be a friend of the show.
Yes, I'm a friend of the show.
Absolutely.
Greetings to our viewers.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much indeed. We're glad to have you tonight to discuss this very important document. I just was looking at the, as it was launched, as it was captured, some of the things that were said about it. I just want to go through it briefly and the national context, how they put it, and some of the things that they brought out. Now, it says, national context 1.1, blue economy, a sea of opportunities. It says the value of Ghana's maritime estate is immeasurable, and over 25% of Ghanaians dwell directly in coastal communities, and more than 50% of the population live within 50 kilometers of the coast. The fisheries sector alone generates over $1 billion in revenue each year and accounts for at least 5% of Ghana's agricultural gross domestic product, GDP, a contribution that is likely to increase substantially with a better management, with a better managed fisheries sector. The sector also provides livelihood for an estimated 10% of the population when its value chain is properly accounted for, a percentage that has the potential to increase threefold if this strategy is effectively implemented. They are talking about the National Integrated Maritime Strategy. Furthermore, Ghana is among the top 10 fish-consuming countries globally, with an average per capita consumption of 23.7 kilograms per annum. Equally important is the fact that in the last decade, the maritime space of Ghana has been one of the most active areas of oil and gas exploration globally, and the revenue from the industry has progressively contributed to the socio-economic development of the country. It is estimated that about 80% of the country's hydrocarbon potential, most of which lies offshore, remains untapped. Technological evolution has also made seabed mining feasible, offering the country additional great opportunities. It says with Ghana's coast falling along strategic navigational routes linking Africa with North and South America, Europe and Asia, the shipping industry has remained steady as a major driver of our country's economy. Given our largely underdeveloped tourism sector, maritime tourism also holds great potential or great promise for generating national income and fostering prosperity and ensuring sustainable livelihoods of local communities, blah, 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 blah. And so that's just the national context they put it, capturing, the fisheries, the oil, and what it portends for those of our people who dwell in the coastal areas and all that. So I just want to find out from you, first of all, what the names is, as far from the aspects point of view.
Thank you very much. And again, greetings to all our viewers. I think as the name suggests, we can take them word by word, national, integrated, maritime strategy, we can take them word by word. And first is the fact that this is a national product, and I think it's important to underscore that fact. Right. And then the use of the word integrated is important because of the recognition that this is not one thing that can be done by, if you like, a segmented body. Right. It requires coordination of various agencies, and consequently, an integrated approach in dealing with it is very important. Yes. Maritime, as the name suggests, that has to do with the sea. And then strategy, let me maybe first and foremost give some commendation to those who played, if you like, a pivotal role in coming out with this document, which we call the National Integrated Maritime Strategy, for short, the NIMS. I think some of the credit goes to the United States of America Embassy in Accra, yes. The United Nations Office on Drug and Crime, UNODC, SEMLOS, yes. GOGMI, the Ghana Maritime Authority, yes. The national security. I think they played a very important role, in this. And then not only the ministry, but the secretariat as well, and the Ministry of Transport. They all played pivotal roles in getting this. And then also my good friend, Dr. Osei Dixon. Yeah, I think he championed from the regional perspectives and then from national perspectives. So in that, you'll be able to identify, the threats, the trends, various developments, and then challenges, that exist. I must say that looking through the document to a very large measure, there has been an attempt to address, the issue of threats. Doesn't look too futuristic, for me in terms of going forward, even though I found dates like 2040 in the document, but it is meant to be a document to be reviewed after 5 years. And therefore, I think an opportunity comes, therefore, to where there are gaps, to address those gaps. But it is a very fine document that outlines very key areas, that are important for our development of the maritime sector.
Right.
I must say that if you look at the document, they talk about the fact that it is underpinned by certain principles. And I think those principles are germane as far as this document is concerned, because as I said earlier on, it is integrated. Integrated because of the fact that there needs to be coordination.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at the agencies that have something to do with the maritime sector, you are talking about maybe 20 to 25 agencies, having something to do with the maritime sector one way or the other. Sometimes, even though there are complementarities, there are times too when there are overlaps.
Yes.
And consequently, there will be turf wars. Someone feels you are coming into my territory, etc. So, getting everybody on board and then trying as much as possible to harmonize their views is a very delicate and complex thing to do. And that is why I think we must commend those who have done this. For me, as an academic as well, from my starting point, and I think I raised this before, that yes, you want to develop a strategy. Develop your strategy based on, as I said, the threats, the trends, the developments, the challenges that you see. But in all of this, it ought to be underpinned by a policy framework. And even though I know we have a national transport policy, in which we have a small bit on maritime, we don't have a comprehensive maritime transport policy. And I think that is one area that we need to look at. Maybe if you ask me, maybe in 5 years' time, when we have put this to the test, when we have implemented a number of things in this, one of the key areas that we ought to be looking at would be how do we relate the strategy to an existing policy. So out of that policy, we can do our prioritization. Once we segment, we would know areas where we have competitive advantage, which we want to highlight, which we want to throw resources into. Because it's a wide gamut of things, and you can't deal with all of it at the same level with the resources that you have. And therefore, you would want to prioritize. So you realize that even in this document, there are priorities. There is prioritization in the areas in which have been given. Only that, as I said, they don't seem to be underpinned by a policy. So maybe let me bring it home. If, for example, you want to accentuate tourism that emanates from the maritime sector, or you want to accentuate shipping and shipbuilding, ship repair, you get me? Then it means that you would elevate it to a certain status based on the fact that in your policy, that is where you want to throw more resources. But generally, as I said, it's a very good document looking at security issues, looking at issues of maritime governance. It's looking also at issues dealing with the legal framework, issues of the coordination, etc. So it's done very well as a starting point. If we are able to pick it, and the good thing is that apart from the principles that underpin it, they've also stated clearly the strategic objectives. I'm sure we'll come to that in greater detail. But the objectives, and then out of the objectives, they have action areas. But then we eventually need to drill down to particularities,
right,
so that we can address the issues that are attendant to particular issues which have been raised.
Oh, great. Awesome. Thank you very much. That's your initial submission. Dr. Emmanuel Kofimbia, he's a maritime law consultant and legal practitioner at Alliance Partners. I'm told we have Dr. Osebunsu Dixon on the line. He is the Director of Policy, the Ministry of National Security, and he's also known as the architect of the National Integrated Maritime Strategy. Doc, if you can hear me, good evening.
Good evening.
Can you speak up a bit, sir?
Oh, hello. Good evening, Kennedy.
Awesome. Great. Good to have you on the line. You just heard Dr. Kofimbia's initial submission. He's giving you a thumbs up for a job well done.
Oh, well, I must say a big thank you to Dr. Kofimbia, and also for the clarity that he's brought to the discussion. I think it's been quite succinct.
Awesome. All right. So let me find out from you as chairman of the Joint Ministerial Committee on the National Integrated Maritime Strategy, if you can walk us through the processes that went into putting together this document.
Okay. So and let me begin by also acknowledging those of members who are listening to us this evening. First and foremost, the notion of having a name, so a National Integrated Maritime Strategy, is, as Dr. Kofimbia said, it's something that would translate with a number of constituents. Not only government, but also with those in the private sector. And then also those, within the private sector, differentiated audience, those in academia, those in industry, those in the service sector, and so on and so forth. And within the government sector, those in security, those in regulatory frames, of references, those kinds of things. Now, I think the commencement point would look somewhere around 2016, 2017. When we had completed with looking at the legal framework and some of the challenges that we had, for example, within the Ghanaian maritime legal framework. So we had done a comprehensive study of this type of framework for, I think, about a year to understand the legal authorities that entities within the Ghanaian jurisdiction actually had. And having done that one, we began on the idea that we had to learn also from other countries and their experiences. And so we brought on external consultants to assist us. I remember the bringing in of somebody like Phil Howell, who had been an advisor, the U.S. advisor on African affairs to African Union, and currently also with the IMO, IMOS, International Maritime Organization. So we have consultants like that. And then also those from the ACSS, And then there were a number of them that also came along, including local consultants. Some laws like Dr. Mja has mentioned were also one of them. We also had GOGMI and also had CSGS Africa. Dr. Lamte played a very seminal role in these matters then. And then you had a national technical working group that had been assembled to then assist me with execution of this particular national assignment. And so there, you had a very large group of differentiated interests and audiences that wanted to see this document, in fruition. We also had the local group, things like artisanal fishermen. We also had people within industry, like shipbuilders and things like that, those who attend to ship repairs and all those kinds of people who had to consult at a base level. And we also had to do interministerial work by bringing everybody on board. You would notice, for example, that this being an inception document, the country has never had such a cost-cutting document in all its 6 years of existence. And so we were embarking on something that was quite a novelty. In fact, not only in Ghana, but around Africa itself. No such document had existed because since you've had AIMS, and the ECOWAS Integrated Maritime Strategy, had instructed countries to do that. No country at the time had actually done one. So we were beginning on a big novelty and had to consider the fact that even state institutions needed to be fully aware that the ocean and the ocean space were areas of increased wealth for the country, and we must be turning to perhaps maybe the blue economy. So we had to bring up this conversation from an economic point of view to strengthen the argument for the security conspectus on these matters. And having done that type of wide area So entity to entity movement. We also went on the grassroots level to sensitize the country because the mandate required public affairs to be very preeminent in what we were doing. So after those, we now embarked on having our initial drafts. So some of these drafts came from some of the composite entities that were part of from public sector, private sector, academia, all over. There were some of those kinds of drafts. And then also some mapping exercises that we had done, especially because we had traveled to other countries to fully understand what we were called to grapple with, and then to shape up the document that would ensue. So we now had like a document I'll call Draft 0. And with that, we would now send these documents to other entities within the maritime space to look at some of those inception drafts and to see whether they could validate them. So we had some validations from some of these entities. And having had those validations, we also started talking to external partners also to be able to look at the international aspect, international dynamics of some of these matters, and also got a lot of support from UNODC and all other entities that one might mention in this part of it, whether they are regional or international. So that work was also done. Having done that, we now could freshen up the document, and by I think about the second or third year, we were almost through with the basic draft of the document. We had done copious work on it now. So now we were heading towards the ministers that had authorized us to do this work. And here you were talking about the joint ministries of national security. And then, as you would notice, in the fullness of time, we'll bring on other ministries, defense, interior, and so on and so forth, into the fisheries, energy, and all those entities. And after we've also had their validation, we marched straight to cabinet to present the document to cabinet. It wasn't an easy walk. Cabinet quizzed the document. It took roughly, I would say, more than about 11 months thereafter. And eventually the document had a full run with all these ministries. And then finally, we also had the president assenting to the document or indicating to us that he had fully seen the document and had fully endorsed the document. And so what was left was, basically the launch of the document. So we then composed an interministerial team to start looking at it and selected the ministries that would do so. I think 7 of the ministries provided the team that would work along with me on this particular launch. And then we had the Navy helping us with a very important forum, the IMDEC. And so that's the program to which we came. That brought in the largest gathering of navalists and all sorts of people concerned with national security, maritime strategy, fisheries matters, energy matters, and the like, media and everybody. And I think that, in a nutshell, should encapsulate some of the thematic things along the journey towards fruition.
Right. Doc, you made mention of the fact that there was a joint ministerial thing. That's Ministry of Transport, Ministry of National Security. And you said along the line you are willing to rope in Ministries of Defense and the Interior. And if you study the document critically, you realize that it's quite tilted towards security. Is that what you intend to achieve, or you intended to achieve? Because there seems not to be some balance,
Oh, no, I do not think.
If you understand what I'm trying to ask.
I do. You would have to look at two important things. This is a strategy document. And in the nature of a strategy, you would not even go too deep into, because that would be tactical matters and operational matters one will be discussing. So this is basically a strategy. It gives you a general perspective of where the country stands, its role regionally, its role nationally, its priorities, and then what it would do in terms of how it would figure out how it will come out of maybe some of the problems that it. One of the major things that the country faces is security. And so, if you find that security is enhanced, it is because, as of now, it is a primordial problem that we have. So we need to actually pay some attention to it. You can't have security with lawlessness. You can't have trade with lawlessness. You can't have blue economy with lawlessness. You can't have any of the things that we've talked about if you generally have a sea of troubles that is just full of insecurity. Your insurance will go up, your cost of living within your country will go up, and you will begin to have all sorts of things, terrorism, every kind of evil that one can imagine, maritime-wise, you would have them. And so every dream, every objective that we have set relies on the fact that there is actually a safe and a secure haven for all those activities to take place. I mean, just imagine your studio. If while doing your action, you find that there is some insecurity problem, fire has broken out, or that, how you call it, the building is collapsing, everything will come to a standstill. So you have to, the first objective of every country is to secure itself. And without maritime sovereignty, security, all those kinds of other aspects will actually be inconsequential. But allied to that also, you see, in the modern world, you have a nexus between economy and security. In other words, economy provides security. So you find that the document is anchored on all those kinds of legs. You have the aspects about driving blue economy. So you have to look at the six objectives that are actually adumbrated within the body purpose of the document. First, dealing with issues about maritime governance, to issues to do with the entire protection of coastal and maritime areas, to look at driving blue economies, to look at also issues that verge on the security of our state in terms of our cooperation with others, regional and national, training issues, and so on and so forth. So it's a kind of document that describes all these areas. But if you find that there is a note on security, it is because it's a primordial threat. I refer you, for example, to page 23 of the National Security Strategy of Ghana, from which this document picks its feet. So you would notice that maritime security has been an enhanced one, not only in Ghana, but around the Gulf of Aden, the Gulf of Guinea, the Indian Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. If you look at the South China Sea, there are problems around the world. And if you look at it from a regional perspective, there are issues around. And that is why the NIMS remains an abiding document that other countries are actually keen and racing for. And I think that it's well placed that it puts Ghana on a pedestal of a safe maritime zone, not a country full of piracy, a country full of troubles. No, you can't have trade or blue economy development as we wish it. I mean, I heard you at the beginning talking about some of those inception objectives, which had to be doing with the driving blue economy, doubling our GDP, for example, like what Verde had, with its GDP. You can't do that if you have a bundle of criminality festering and consuming you. You can't have it. So it's a fundamental fact of all strategies that you must secure yourself, and others must then, feel confident to do investments and things like that.
All right, so let me ask my final question before we let you go, and that has to do with what your expectations of stakeholders is as far as this document is concerned, as far as your realization of the objectives as enshrined or captured in the document are concerned.
Okay, that's a very broad question, but I'll narrow it down to some of the lessons that I personally learned through the 4 years of doing this particular work. Now, the first important thing that I think is important is national commitment. National commitment. We all must be committed to this document. All of Ghana, its president and its people. Everyone must be committed to it. The media, you must be committed to it. And those of us who are into maritime matters must be very committed to it. Without commitment, the names would not have been possible. So the first thing that I noticed was we need a national commitment, and that all countries that have succeeded with any form of strategy were committed to it. And that means that we have to bear in mind, like, for example, Murphy's Law. Murphy talks about the fact what will go wrong, and it will go wrong at an adverse time. So we must be ready and committed because it would be met with some challenges and things like that. But our commitment will resolve our conundrums. So that is the first. I think the second must also be leadership. The names must actually be grounded in strong leadership, those who understand it and those who have a willingness and have a commitment to it. That leadership is important. Without that, all the effort will come to nothing. So the leadership is very key to the development as well as the sustenance, as well as to the implementation, and as well as to the success, full-blooded success of the entire program. The third thing I'd like to also talk about has to do with something that you probably know as much as I do, which has to do with resource allocation. Now, if we are committed to something, we must allocate resources for it. It must appear in our budget. It must appear in our budget. And when I talk about resources, I by no means mean only financial resources, for that would be a very narrow view. We should be thinking about the material resources. We should be thinking about the human resources. We should be thinking about the technological resources. And that's very important, because you can't develop anything without these things that I've talked about. The allocation of resources. You must be committed. And in your commitment, you must pump the resources that are needed. You must find a way to pump it directly to sustain what you actually believe in. So, for example, I've seen, that they have, I think about 2 weeks ago, there were the launching of these commissioning of about 2 ships for sea patrol and things like that. That is in the right direction. Our country must move in that direction. We must look at how we stop all the illegalities at sea. And we must, apart from resource allocation, also consider the issue of measurement. So we must measure or do M&E on the journey that we take. It will by no means be perfect. And so all countries that have tried the maritime strategy and have been successful, and you can mention them. I mean, globally, you see countries, for example, like the United States, China, Japan, and so on. In Africa, you see countries like Kenya, you see Mauritius, you see Cape Verde, you see. So there are a number of examples. South Africa also included. And I think that, so we must measure ourselves against these people and then periodically be assessing where are we at. And I heard Dr. Emian rightfully suggest that, yes, a document that has a strategy, that has a time limit, will focus on priorities. At another epoch, it will focus on different set of priorities. So now that we have these priorities, we must measure how we make effective those priorities and how efficacious we are able to derive some value out of them. But that will come through diligence, commitment, proper leadership. It would also come through proper resource allocation. But I also must also add that nothing is possible if we don't, or we are incapable of communicating to our own people.
Right.
Adept at communicating with our own people as well as with the outsiders. And what you are doing today is actually one of the areas, or I think the fifth pillar of the NIMS. So what you are doing is good. And I would say that it must continue until such time as every nook and cranny of the strategy is felt and resourced and it's successful. So these are my plenary.
Right. Doc, yes, thank you very much indeed. But please don't leave us yet. Dr. Mbia wants to, interact with
Doc,
you.
a very quick one.
Point,
and once again, as I said, commendable effort. Very, very commendable effort. Very good document to work with. I think you mentioned in going forward certain elements which you thought were key. Among them, you mentioned the national commitment, leadership, and then resource allocation, which are indeed very, very important. Doc, for the benefit of our viewers and maybe our listeners as well, leadership. In the document, we have a National Maritime Council, and then we also have a National Maritime Council Secretariat. The bureaucracy. How would you explain it for the benefit of our viewers? The bureaucracy, especially knowing what we know, that sometimes these things perform more like boards, and the tendency is for them to be politicized, and then we see it as an avenue of rewarding like party apparatchiks, etc. I mean, what would be your comment for the benefit of our viewers?
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your question. I think that, so what animated the issue of the National Maritime Council within the architecture of the names is that you need a superordinate body that has both the clout to look at all these diversified areas in a manner that brings it within the national vision itself. And that is the reason why you have the Minister for Transport, the Minister for National Security, you have the Defense Minister, Foreign Minister, yes, you have the Minister for Energy and so on, including the heads of respective state agencies, and then those who we might find necessary. It takes a bit of inflection from the what is just in Article 83-84 of the Constitution, the National Security Council. So there must be a body that actually at a higher level looks at the development of this and integrates it so that Ghana begins to feel like a coastal state, real coastal state. Because for far too long, Dr. Ambia, you would agree that we haven't actually thought of ourselves as a coastal state. I mean, when I was young and I was in primary school, Jack and Joe, I do not remember that every time we drew the map of Ghana, it was only the land. How did we even think about the sea? And it's up to today, it's a part of our problems. And so it's important that at the very national level itself, I mean, our top leadership, ministers and all those things are actually. But you made a very important interjection when you said that, so that it doesn't become an avenue for just patronage. And I think that is right, because if it becomes that, then it would not achieve its real and true objectives. But I hope it would not. And then the other issue of the Secretariat is that having had a body like that, just like the National Security Council, there's a National Security Council Secretariat. And so the body itself will not be self-effectuating, or they will not be self-effecting. So it's important that there is a coordinator, there is somebody who at least the council can. And you've noticed that the vice president here is the head of the National Maritime Council. So it tells you where our country is headed. We are positioning Ghana to begin to think of itself clearly as a maritime nation, you know. And other countries have done it before. If you go to the other regions, I mean, you realize that it's not a novelty at all. So it is something that, if well implemented, and I think that today we are having a quotation of experts now in this particular area, from different walks of life, from economy, from security, from legal, and it's a good thing for our country. So I hope that in the fullness of time, I mean, we'll pick the right cloth and do the right things here.
Thank you very much, Doc.
Doc, are you satisfied?
Yes, certainly. Okay. I share his views. I mean, I share those sentiments. But as I said, for the benefit of our viewing public,
yes, absolutely,
it's important because I needed to raise them because some have raised it with me. Yes. You know, some have raised it with me. That don't you think you are creating an unnecessary bureaucracy, etc. So, but the points he makes are pertinent.
Great. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Osei Dixon. He is the Director of Policy at the Ministry of National Security. He's also described as the architect of the National Integrated Maritime Strategy. We're grateful that you shared some perspectives with us as far as this particular document is concerned and the launch that took place a couple of weeks ago. We are deeply grateful to you, and I know as and when we call on you, you would oblige us. We're grateful, sir. Yes, Doc, so let me come to you. Yes, I was also going to raise the issues he raised about the leadership, about the, you know, the issue of resource allocation, about the issue of national commitment and all that. And he is emphatic that this must reflect in our budget. We must have human resource, you know, allocation. We must emphasize, you know, material resources. We must talk about technological resources as well. Inject these things into it so that we can have it effectively running. Yeah. So if you can bring up, he has given his perspectives already. If I mean, you can give us a perspective.
I share his views. I mean, the point is that the document itself, you know, recognizes that some of these key elements he mentioned. You know, he used the word national commitment, but if you look at the document and you try to envisage the threats, for example, you realize what one of the things that is mentioned there is political will. You get me? Political will. And we use the word, you know, time without number. But it is so important to see whether the will is there, as it were, to implement the things as you expect them to be done.
Right.
And as for Doc and others who contribute, they will do it. But then when it comes to the implementation, are we going to follow those things? You know, there is always an accusation of, if you like, the political realm of sea blindness. You know, to what extent can we get away this sea blindness? because he mentioned that when they drew the Ghana map in those days, you did not drew only land, you never drew the sea. You know, so it's important for us to bear in mind that it needs iron port, you know, it needs seminars, it needs, you know, one of the key things they also mentioned in the document is maritime domain awareness. You know, creating awareness of the maritime sector and its contribution. Remember the last time I was here, I talked about the blue economy. You know, so even though you were right in mentioning that it seems that security has been given some priority, but he has explained why. Because without security, nothing else. You know, so he's explained that. But I think beyond that also, we can't just rely on the security and say we are secured and that is it. But once we get that security, other things need to flow. And it is important for us to then look at the resource allocation. They mentioned a fund, you know, a fund in the document. And I think that the fund idea is good, and that would ensure that there is money at all times to run these programs, because without that, it will not work. You know, even though you put a question to him in terms of how skewed, you know, the security, the point is that there are also broad frameworks, because within the remit, they talk, for example, at a thriving blue economy, which is so broad. So within the framework of a thriving blue economy, some of the things which were not accentuated could be brought out and highlighted and dealt with. You know, earlier on I was talking about how futuristic is it all. Yes, we're looking at the challenges that we are faced with today, but 30 years, 40 years, you know, what do we envisage? Should we continue to be what we are today? Because if you look at the aims of the AU, you know, Africa Integrated Maritime Strategy, it's been criticized, you know, that it's merely things that are on paper, you know, there is nothing that really, but this one puts actions, it puts priority areas, it puts things that are implementable. The only thing is we need to take the steps to ensure that they are done. You know, and how can they be done if you don't have the proper resource allocation? And if it does not, look at the research, you know, and then the knowledge gathering, which is also incorporated in the document, you know, as one of the key strategic objectives. The key thing is we should be looking, for example, look, Kennedy, if you take the next 20 to 30 years, and then you gauge, you can see quite clearly, even in Europe, America, the developing economies, decarbonization and the shift towards different types of fuels, biofuels. Today, Maersk Line has come out with one of their biggest ships using methanol. You get me? I hear we have found lithium. You get me? Batteries are going to be the driving force of things in the future. To what extent do these things reflect our thought for the future in terms of this? If we are talking about biofuels, we are fighting over cocoa here and there, but if we're talking about biofuels in the future, that is going to be the fuels that are going to be consumed. Therefore, to what extent do we put all of this in a framework for the future? So those are the things that I believe as we go on, we'll be able to address. But the document is broad in its framework, so it creates opportunity for you to bring things into it because of the broad nature that it has. I realized that he talked about a number of the threats which form the foundation of the document. See, the threats that are outlined there, for example, is the security issue, which he mentioned quite clearly. The maritime governance issue. The maritime governance issue brings into focus the question of the sea blindness I talked about. You know, what is the political will? To what extent are we able to elevate policy to the highest level and ensure that we attain the objectives of that policy? So that is important. You also have to look at the legal framework, and that is also mentioned, you know, as part of the threats. Because if you have a disjointed legal framework, there is a law here, people don't know which is which. You have international conventions, instruments, which have not been ratified and extrapolated into national law. And when that happens, it means that fragmentation does not allow you to have an implementation of the things that because there ought to be a legal framework to it. There ought to be a backing. There ought to be something that has sanctions which would ensure there is enforcement of that legislation. So that is one thing that is contained there. And I'm sure in drilling down, these things can then be achieved in terms of the implementation.
Right. I'll be coming back to you. We're going for a break. But when I come back to you, I would want to find out from you whether you agree with the President when he said the National Integrated Maritime Strategy would be the panacea to safety, security, and sustainable development issues pertaining to the domestic maritime industry in our country. If that is the case, if you agree with him, how can we achieve that? This is Iron Port here on Metropolitan Television, and tonight we are taking a look at the National Integrated Maritime Strategy, and we're taking a look at the prospects for growth and sustainability. We're going for a quick break. When we return, we'll continue the show. Please stay with us.
Guys, now I'm tired. I'll go on a date with whoever gets here first.
Princess, really? Okay, I come.
Shut up!
Boss, fill my tank with Super XP Raw 95.
Well up with Super XP Raw 95 and Diesel XP high performance products from Goyle.
Sorry, Tony got here first, so I'm stepping with him.
Oh, cut him. Hey,
Choose Super XP Raw 95 and Diesel XP for an energizing driving experience. Always go for Goyle Super XP Raw 95. Goyle, good energy.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse, and my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. Currently, my goods are on the high seas, covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance for the projects, and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating greater opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
Business and life can be like the sea sometimes. Sometimes serene, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, and at times it brings the unexpected. However it is like, trust Phoenix Insurance for your home, car, business, and marine insurance needs. Call 0302 246 319 or 0243 690 492.
At Phoenix, you experience a delightful service delivered with wisdom.
Right, so you're welcome back, and this is Iron Port here on Metropolitan Television, and tonight we're taking a look at the National Integrated Maritime Strategy. We're taking a look at the prospects for growth and sustainability, and with us in the studios tonight is Dr. Emmanuel Kofimbia. Indeed, earlier we had spoken to Dr. Osebonsu Dixon, who is the Director of Policy at the Ministry of National Security. He's also being described as the architect of the National Integrated Maritime Strategy. Doc, before we went for the break, I sought to find out from you whether you agree with the President when he says that the document would be the panacea to issues of security, safety, and sustainable development in the domestic maritime industry in our country. If you agree with him, how are we going to be able to achieve this with this particular document? Before you come in, let me announce that the phone lines are activated, and so the number to dial is 020-552-8353, 020-552-8353. You can call in and contribute to the discussion. Yes, Doc.
Yes, it's, one thing to say the document will, but yes, safety, security, all of the things we want to derive as far as the marine environment is concerned, or the maritime space. We talk about fishing, the realization of the objectives. Today, I think we are now importing fish up to about $500 million a year.
Yeah.
You get me? When we used to be a net exporter of fish. So he's quite right that the document contains, if you like, material, information, but the document by itself would not achieve those things, except we breathe life into it. To breathe life into it, the document has come out with a number of things, which are strategic objectives. And it has come out with ways in which you can implement those things.
Right.
Therefore, to the extent that those things will be implemented, I would say that we can realize those objectives and therefore achieve what the president has said. But how do we do that?
Right.
For example, it talks about maritime security.
Yes.
And therefore, put maritime security in a broad framework. But then the issue is, if you don't have the wherewithal, if you don't have the technology, we have VT, MIS, vessel traffic management system. How you utilize these things for the benefit of security, how you share information, it's important. The gathering of intelligence in security is important. What kind of infrastructure do we place in the hands of the Navy, for example, to fight acts of piracy, illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing,
yes.
Narcotics trafficking, psychotropic substances? How do you deal with these? And if all of these are there, then you are dealing with the security equation. When you come to maritime governance, for example, what are the policies? What are the structures? What have you put in place? I mean, Doc mentioned that he expects that this should be dealt with by leaders at the highest level to make sure that it doesn't remain on the ground, but that there is a force to push it, to implement it. We may be divided exactly on how it works, because sometimes it may work, sometimes it may not work because of the implementation. So at the end of the day, when it comes to the implementation, the document has outlined all of the things, including priority areas and what ought to be done.
Right.
Doing them, as I said, is the key.
Right.
Doing them is the key.
Now, there are calls for international maritime rating agencies to be mindful of the impact of inaccurate reportage on African countries, because many people feel that they don't report accurately happenings on the African continent, and so this tends to affect international or global trade. And so they are calling on these international maritime rating agencies to be mindful of their actions, and so that we can realize the potential of Africa as far as this particular sector or industry is concerned. Is this a call that you agree with?
Yes, I think it's important. It's important, information is is very, very important. And decisions are taken by various players based on information.
Right.
I'm sure particularly you'll be referring to the IMO, IMB Piracy Reporting Center.
Yes. Yeah.
The way in which they report acts of piracy, if I'm right.
Yes.
You know, it's most unfortunate because the IMB Piracy Reporting Center is aware of the nomenclature, you know, for the, if you like, the various things that happen at sea, which we refer to as, if you like, the negatives. You know, so if you take piracy, for example, there's a definition of piracy. If you take the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, Article 101, it defines piracy. And therefore, what constitutes piracy is known. So, when there are things which do not qualify as piracy, or they are not piratical acts, and in looking at maybe the Gulf of Guinea or looking at Ghana, you classify those as piracy, it is inappropriate. Because the tendency is that it could lead to insurers, marine insurers, hiking up premiums because of the fact that they feel that your waters are piracy infected.
Dangerous, yeah.
You know, they are dangerous waters, and therefore we will distinguish between armed robbery at sea. We will distinguish between kidnapping, you know, human trafficking. We will distinguish between all of this. So you can't put them all together and say they are acts of piracy. You know, because piracy is piracy. Armed robbery is armed robbery. Kidnapping is kidnapping. Even though they may happen at sea, they are differentiated from piracy. So for a reportage that says, for example, that the Gulf of Guinea is a hotbed for acts of piracy, you know, whereas, and then maybe puts figures to it and says that there has been maybe 23 attacks within a certain period, whereas in actual fact there may have been 2 or 3 attacks. You know, as against acts of kidnapping, maybe robbery, piracy, armed robbery, etc. So it's a matter of concern. You know, one for the ships that want to call the ports, especially in the Gulf of Guinea area, and then 2 for insurance companies and the premiums which go up, and then generally giving a bad name, you know, in order that you can hang the region. It's a matter of concern that, especially as I said, the IMB Piracy Reporting Center, since it knows and is aware, you get me. I know that in IMO, because of the challenges of piracy, this definition, there's been an attempt to say all the time, piracy and armed robbery at sea. Any time you do that, the tendency is to box piracy with armed robbery. And sometimes if you have 10 cases of armed robbery and 1 case of piracy, and you add them up, and then put the caption, piracy and armed robbery at sea, and say 11, what sticks in the minds of people is the piracy. That, I believe, is not.
Now, in your own independent assessment, taking a look at happenings over there right now, do you think there's some element of stability and safety?
Yes, certainly. Certainly. I mean, if you go back and look at the records, you know, from the 2000s, you know, come down to recent times, you realize if you drew the graph, I mean, let's take the Gulf of Guinea, generally, you see that the graph goes up, but now you see that it's tapered down. You know, we all know that a lot of what was happening was oil theft. Oil theft. Sometimes where they even occurred on the seas do not therefore qualify them as acts of piracy. Because piracy is supposed to be on the high seas. So when you have occurrences like that, you know, illegal bunkering taking place, and then you classify all of them as acts which are detrimental to the interest of shipping. Yes, they are detrimental to the interest of shipping, but are they piratical acts? If they are not, then you segregate them in as such. Today, there has been a lot of improvement.
right.
as far as the Gulf of Guinea is concerned. You look at the numbers, you see quite clearly that the attacks have dropped, especially because Nigeria has put its act together. Nigeria has.
Or you think that there are some things that we've left out?
Yeah, there certainly may be things that we may have left out. But as I said earlier on, these things are very broad.
Right.
And because of that canopy they create, there are a number of things that you can bring to fit under them.
Right.
You mentioned, for example, as one of them, a thriving blue economy.
Yes.
You talked about the marine coastal areas, the environment.
Yes.
So when you talk about the marine environment, I could spend the whole day talking about the marine environment and coastal areas. You talk about plastic pollution, So even though it may not be mentioned directly, but all of these can be placed under these key segments which you have mentioned. So for me, they capture, if you like, to a very large extent, they capture what you would want to see. Because I've told you that to mention the blue economy alone means that all of the elements of the blue economy, from shipping to oil and gas. So you may not see oil and gas accentuated, but when you see blue economy encompasses oil and gas.
Absolutely.
So then ports and shipping, oil and gas, ship repair, all of them can come within the framework of the blue economy. Issues of sustainability, issues of the SDG goal number 14, all of them can come within the framework of the blue economy. So once it talks about maritime governance, it talks about security, it talks about the thriving blue economy. Then I think lastly it talks about cooperation.
Yes.
Say the last one again. You talked
International
about
cooperation.
International cooperation and something,
The dynamic and diversified regional and international cooperation.
Yes, so that is key. At the end of the day, I've told you that shipping is global. And because shipping is global, you cannot work in silos as countries. There is the need for some integrated approach to dealing with issues. So that, for example, addresses the broad framework of cooperation among various countries, globally, regionally, and then even coming to the national level. So it indeed does encapsulate what is required, at least, as I said, for the starting.
Now, some other players in the industry are also calling, we're going back to the Gulf of Guinea, they're calling on states along the Gulf of Guinea to invest in a cutting-edge maritime technology. Is this not overdue?
Overdue. But better late than never. I'll say better late than never, because the shipping industry is dynamic. And because of that, a number of changes are taking place.
Right.
I have just mentioned the fact that greenhouse gases decarbonization has taken center stage, and it is driving technology. So today, the ships that are being built, they are being built such that they can use particular fuels. That means that people are developing particular fuels.
Right.
So all of that is movement of technology. And then if you take the fact that today, artificial intelligence, AI, has taken center stage, and it is going to be a key driver. We are going to have autonomous ships for the future. To what extent is Africa preparing itself for these?
Right.
Time was when there were about 40 crew on a ship. Today, you can talk of a mega ship, a container ship, and we'll have 7 or 8 crew on board. So the seafaring tradition, should it continue in the same way? Are we going to continue to train people like that? So do we look at technology and the impact of technology, and therefore to diversify our training such that our training takes account of the new trends that are coming up. Other than that, we'll train for something that is no longer of use.
Okay, so I just wanted to, a little bit of curiosity, whether we have a strategy, a maritime strategy for our sub-region, West Africa. And if we do, how does ours fit into that?
Yes, ECOWAS has something drawn also from the AU. Again, it's very broad, But I believe it is broad because they expect that countries should feed into it, take it, and then develop along those broad policy framework.
Yes.
They develop something that is convenient and suitable to them. Because remember that even though we have said that it's important for there to be cooperation, for there to be exchange of information among the various countries, there are also nuances that exist and particularities with each country. We cannot say that we have the equal resources, and therefore what will be a priority for one country may not be a priority for another country. So the broad framework is there, but we are supposed to take out of that broad framework, just like the aims, the African Integrated Maritime Strategy, because the ECOWAS thing comes from the African Integrated Maritime Strategy. And out of that broad framework, how do we carve out things that relate particularly to our countries?
Right, so there's this World Maritime Day that is coming off on the 28th of this month, and the theme is MAPL at 50. Our commitment goes on. That's a theme. Yes, tell us what your views about this year's celebration would be.
Yes.
World Maritime Day.
You know, you have to go back to, if you like, the formation of the International Maritime Organization and realize that the key issues for IMO at the time when it was being set up was maritime safety.
Yes.
So safety was key. The environment at that time did not play any significant role.
Right.
However, with improvement in technology, the building of bigger ships,
yes,
and therefore the tendency for higher levels of pollution, especially from oil,
is high.
Then also land-based source pollution increasing. It was realized that unless firm action was taken, we're not going to be able to control pollution in the seas.
Yes.
And that then brought about MAPL, and that is over 50 years ago. And that is why it is significant that it ought to be celebrated. Because the point is, can we, looking back, 50 years, to what extent have we come in dealing with the menace of marine litter, for example, of marine pollution, marine plastics, of oil, whether it's oil slick or tanker devastation, whatever may have happened. All of these things are things that we need to reflect on.
Right.
And then remember that MAPL has 6 annexes, you get me? And the last one now has to do with the issue of decarbonization, which we are talking about
Just in 30
now.
seconds, our time is running out.
Air pollution.
Yes.
So to what extent? Now we have dealt with the 5 key areas. To what extent air pollution, and how are we dealing with air pollution? So I'm sure this MAPL at 50 is to also draw attention to the fact that, yes, we have achieved a lot, but when it comes to air pollution and decarbonization, which is key, greenhouse gases, we need to do a lot more.
Awesome. Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel Kufimbia. He is a maritime law consultant and legal practitioner at Alliance Partners here in Accra. He was our guest tonight on Iron Port, and we've been discussing the National Integrated Maritime Strategy and the prospects for growth and sustainability. We want to thank you so much, Doc, for making time and coming here. We know you're a very busy person. You're a friend of the show, so you always oblige us. We're grateful for that. We also entreat you to watch the abridged version of Iron Port on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. on Ghana Television. And remember, we'll say thanks to our sponsors, Ghana Regional Authority, Well PLC, Serene Insurance, Ghana Link Network Services, Meridian Port Services, Indeed, and Phoenix Insurance. We thank them so much for being our sponsors. Remember, the show is powered by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. My name is Kennedy Mona. God willing, next week we shall bounce back with another wonderful edition of Iron Port. We entreat you to keep watching the rest of our programs and have a super week ahead. Good evening.